Hello, and welcome to Creating a Family, talk about adoption, foster care, and kinship care. I'm Tracy Whitney, your host for today's episode. If you're brand new here, welcome. We're glad to have you. And if you've been here for a while, you'll understand when I say that today feels a little bittersweet for all of us at creatingafamily.org. We're taking time today to talk with Dawn Davenport, the founding executive director of the organization, as she finalizes her transition into retirement. We're excited for this rare opportunity to hear from her about the birth and growth of creating a family over the last 19 years, and we'll also talk a little bit about the next chapters as the organization grows from the trajectory of supporting foster, adoptive, and relative caregiver families. Dawn, thanks for taking time to do this. I know doing something like this is not necessarily your favorite opportunity, but we're really grateful that you're opening up like this today for us.
Oh, Tracy, I always like to talk to you. So, but it is weird to have it's weird to be sitting in the interviewee seat rather than the interviewer seat. So this is new for me, but you know what? New things are good. Growth, change.
New things are good.
Darn it. Yeah.
Yeah, says the woman who's about to embark on a bunch of new things all at once.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Amen.
So, well, let's start at the beginning then. Can you tell us how and why you started creatingafamily.org and why start with a nonprofit?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good question. The nonprofit part. My background is in law. So I came from that background. My family is formed through birth and adoption, and had seen in the adoption space a real need for information for parents. So way back in 2006, I hope we get this right, I wrote a book, got picked up by Broadway, Doubleday Broadway, and it was published nationally. And part of that was part of the not requirement, but when they give you an advance, they ask that you have, it's totally different now, but you needed what they called a platform, and that really meant a website and a presence on, social media was just kind of beginning back then. But anyway, so I created a website, honestly, just to promote the book. Really, to be honest, just because it was kind of a requirement. I thought, okay, I'll just have this, and it's called, we no longer have the domain, but it was Finding Your Child, because that was tied to the title of the book. The book was on adoption. So anyway, so I had that. And a part of that is you have a contact form on the website. So I was putting up, I don't even know if I started blogging then. Back then we called it blogging. Well, I guess people would still call it blogging, although now we call it articles. But I don't even know if I originally even started that, but I did have some resources up there that I would, because as anybody who's listened to this show for a while knows, I love to research. So I would research. So what happened was people started sending in questions and to contact us. So I would research the answer and post it. And so I was doing a lot of that, or I would incorporate it into a blog or somehow, or I post resources on it. So that's kind of how this all began. And then after a while, I started thinking, oh gosh, there's really a need out there. I mean, even, I guess I knew there was a need, but even a greater need. So that's how, and why a nonprofit? Well, there certainly wasn't. This was never going to be a for-profit. So that was never going to happen. To put it mildly, providing support and training for foster, adoptive, and kinship families is not a moneymaker. So that's why it was a nonprofit.
And once you started the website and the book, how soon after that did the podcast come along?
I was contacted by radio station. Back then it was called internet radio. This would be in probably 2006. Maybe probably the beginning of 2007. And actually this one might have been a terrestrial radio asking me to do a show. And I started talking to them about it. And it didn't feel like the type of show that I was interested in. It felt more fluff and not as helpful as what I thought. If I'm going to do this, I really want to answer questions. I really want it to be providing what I would want, or what I did want as a parent. Because honestly, that's one of the beauties of the podcast, is that I would be facing something and I think, oh, I can get an expert on that. A question that would help me. So they approached me. So I decided that what they were interested in probably wasn't a good fit for what I was interested in, but I did see it as a good medium. So I and actually Jamie Gilmore, who is our assistant director, she was very part time at that point because she was a youth pastor at our church, and I was her second in command because my kids were at that point. Some of them were much younger, but some were entering adolescence. So I was her second in command, heading up the high school age youth. Anyway, so she was helping somewhat, and so it was Blog Talk Radio, is what it was called. God, the sound quality!
I remember. I
I
remember.
shudder. I just shudder to think about the sound quality. In fact, we had Adam Davidson, who was the founder of Planet Money. For those of you who know, a terrific, still going. He is no longer with it, but it's a terrific podcast. Although at the time it wasn't called a podcast, he became because of things that were going on in his life. He became a big follower of our podcast at the nascent stage, and then he joined our board for a while. And he kept saying, "You got to do something about the sound quality. You got to do something." And I would be like, "What?" And oh, things have certainly changed. We completely
Right.
overhauled it. Thank God.
Yeah. Yeah. So, other than Jamie, who were the other significant persons kind of behind the staff in those early days?
Really, it was just Jamie and I. I took no salary. We paid Jamie a pittance. She was still working at the church, and so it was truly just the two of us that were. We had people that were advising us. I mentioned Adam, but there
Hmm.
were many others who were advising us and were extremely instrumental. And my dear husband was agreeing to help us. He's a financial wizard, and so he was helping us figure out, although there wasn't much to figure out since there was no money coming in. So it was more how much we were going to spend on this. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Do any significant moments stand out from those early days? Things that just were kind of maybe lightning bolts that said, "Oh, this is what we need. This is where we need to go," when you were plotting those early plans?
Two things. One, the comments. I know people who are listening, you don't realize until you're sitting in our seats, you don't realize
Mhm.
how important ratings. Put in a plug now, please, everyone. Give
Yeah,
us ratings. I
right.
cannot tell you how important that is. However,
Yep.
specifically, the answer to your question was comments. People would post comments back. I mean, this was such in the early. This was 2007, and like I said, podcast wasn't even a name. It actually was a name, but nobody was using it much back then. And people would leave comments, and they would, but both on the blog, but also on the podcast. And it meant so much to me. I would reread
Mhm.
those comments. I mean, we still do that now. Tracy can tell you, I can tell
Yep,
you,
we really do.
it matters so much to us. And back in the early days, it felt like, well, even now, if unless people comment, you feel like you're talking into the vast blankness.
Right.
But the comments connect you to the people. And that I can't tell you how much when those started coming in, I would read every one of them over and over again, and it just kind of kept me going. It would be like, okay, it seems futile at some point, and we were certainly, I had stopped working and was doing this full time. There was zero money coming in, so that was putting a strain on us. Plus, I was needing to pay Jamie, and it felt stressful. But every time a new comment would come in, I'd be going, okay, I am meeting a need, and I was that person, and I was meeting my own need. So that was a big one. As obvious as it might seem, it was such a big deal. And it still is a big deal. Tracy and I read every single one of your comments,
We do.
and
We do.
we read them out at our staff meetings. Not every one of them, but
Yep.
often Jamie, our Cressa, will pull a comment and read them out. And
Yep.
it makes so much. The other,
Yeah.
was when Dr. Karen Purvis, who I had such respect for, was one of our very early on. She was a guest. I don't actually remember what year it was, but it was very early on. And she and I really hit it off. We approached, I followed her approach. I won't say that we approached parenting kids who have she would say, come from hard places, parenting kids
Hmm.
who've experienced trauma. We approached it the same way, meaning that I agreed. I followed her.
Right.
And
Right.
I don't know how many times she has been on, but she was a, a huge supporter of our organization and a huge supporter of the podcast. And her support meant the world to me, to the point where I could call her up and ask her questions. And then again, I don't remember the year, but when we were celebrating our 1 millionth download, she said, absolutely, I want to be a part of this. And that was our anniversary is in October. And so she was on October and she passed away in December. And I felt like, oh gosh, I did not realize. And I worried about it. And then I talked with just somebody at the organization, her organization. And I said, I feel bad that she did this. And they told me, don't feel bad. She was so looking forward to it. She wanted to do it. She would have said no if she didn't want to do it. So anyway, and she was terrific, as she always was.
Yeah, we were so fortunate to have her support and her encouragement
Yes.
and her perspective, her
Yes.
viewpoint, and the innate preciousness of each child. And that's kind
Yes.
of the fuel that keeps us all going, because being able to stop and say, even in my own parenting journey, I've used her words and her encouragement and her trainings to just stop and say, each one of these children is precious in their own tiny little
Mhm.
way, and meeting their needs is the highest honor of my life. And that's really good fuel in the tank, so to speak,
Amen.
for both parenting and for the work that we do at creating a family.
And she has a positive approach to it as well,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
it's funny. I just talked with another person on our staff, Sarah Moser. She is our prenatal substance exposure
Mm-hmm.
expert. And she just finished, for those of you who don't know, we have workshops for both parents and child welfare professionals, two separate workshops on prenatal substance exposure. There are 3-session workshops. And she just finished one yesterday, I think it was. And I was talking with her yesterday afternoon. And this one was for child welfare professionals. And she was saying they had gotten such positive feedback. And I was saying, that has to make you feel good, Sarah. I said, because you've put your heart and soul into this. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
I hope you allow the positive comments to really penetrate. And she said, the one that made me feel the best was that one of the professionals said, what I like best about this training was that it felt positive.
Mm-hmm.
And I really thought about that. And Sarah said that she goes, I haven't heard that much about this training. And then she and I started talking about, when you're working with kids who have had prenatal substance exposure, alcohol and drugs, or kids who've experienced just trauma, it's easy to
Right.
focus on the negative.
Yep.
And it's a real trap for those of us in this profession. You guys on the staff have heard me talk about this at our staff meetings. It's a real trap because we all feel the overwhelming need to prepare
Right.
parents, because we know
Right.
parents who are unprepared are the ones who we see really struggle. And oftentimes the placements don't make it. So we have unstable placements. So we have this need to prepare you. And there is a temptation to think, okay, we got to tell them about this. We got to tell them. And these are all the negatives. Of course, we're saying, we got to say about this. We got to tell them about this. We got to tell them about this. And prenatal substance exposure. These things can happen. These things can happen. If you don't do this, there are all the secondary impacts, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And yet it goes back to what you said. Each of these children, they're not damaged goods.
Right.
They're precious human beings that can heal, and
Yep.
they can. And our job is to help them reach their potential. And we have to focus more. It's a fine line, walking
It is
that
a fine
line
line.
between preparing
Yep.
people, but also sharing the joys. You and I are both parents through adoption. We both have kids who've come from hard places. I keep going back to Karen's,
Yeah. Yeah.
terminology. And it's been the most joyful thing in my life. I love it. So anyway,
Yeah.
one of the things I loved about Karen is that she also focused on the
Yeah.
positive.
And I love that we've worked really hard to walk that line and always err on the side of joyful hope if we can, where we can. That's one of the things that drew me to the organization back in 2007 when I was looking for more than my local agency was able to provide for me. I just needed to know that I was doing everything I could do to prepare. And I knew where to go when something hit us that I maybe wasn't fully prepared for.
Right.
And that's how I found Creating a Family.
And then joined us. I mean, Tracy, when you say go back to
Yeah.
the beginning, you weren't at the beginning, but God, you've been 9 years
Yep. Yep. I
working
joined in
for us. But
2016.
but you
Yep.
were an active participant in our
Right.
support group
Yeah.
long before then, which put out a plug for
Yeah.
our Facebook group,
Right. I was just going to say that.
facebook.com/group/creating a family.
Yep. And that was my entry into the
Yeah,
organization. I was
exactly.
just looking on social media, which was new at the time,
I know
looking for
people don't remember
information to
that.
support myself.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to take a minute and remind you about our Weekend Wisdom short practical podcast that we release every Saturday morning. We take one of your questions and we dig through our archives to find an answer that will help strengthen your family and help you solve your dilemma. If you think you have a question that would be appropriate for Weekend Wisdom, please send it to info@creatingafamily.org and we'll put you in the queue and we'll work on finding an answer that strengthens your family. Thanks so much. And now back to our interview. You mentioned the online curriculum that we offer for interactive training in groups for prenatal exposure workshops and for support groups for parents. Was any of that on your radar back when you started
No.
podcasting venture?
No, podcasting, nor even when we started the organization.
Right.
Truthfully, I wish I could say it was because it would sound better, it'd make a better story that says that, the vision has been fulfilled. In truth, that is absolutely not. And we were truthfully winging it. Just following the need is what we were doing. And honestly, a bit what we still do. We try to
Yeah.
follow the need. We do have, you mentioned the curriculum. Yeah, it's different from our workshops. I will point that out. The
Right.
workshops are like
Right.
3 sessions. The curriculum is designed for an hour and a half, either training or support group. But no, we did not have that plan. Nor, honestly, I guess the first thing we started was our online education center, our online courses, 1 hour courses.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have that planned either, but it was like we're sitting on a gold mine with.
Right.
We
Right.
have almost 18 years worth of interviews from the podcast of the top experts, and many of whom, not just Dr. Purvis, but Gregory Keck. I mean, just so many people who you might not know about now, but were really big names who are no longer with us.
Right.
And so many of them who are still with us, Bruce Perry and others who have been on.
Yeah.
So we thought we've got to start using this material in a way because not everybody is.
Yeah.
Hard for me to believe since I'm a podcast addict, but not everybody is. So how do we use these in other ways? So yeah, that was probably the first we started. And that wasn't even on our radar at the very beginning.
Right. And just harnessing the power of these amazing experts. And really, many of them were pioneers in the field.
Absolutely.
And, this whole field of understanding the impacts that trauma and neglect and abuse can have on a child's developing brain.
Right.
Was so new to all of us. I think the first podcast I listened to, because I didn't know, I was not a huge podcaster at the time. I'm addicted now, thanks to Dawn's influence.
You're welcome.
I just sat and cried. I could not believe all that I didn't know, first of all, and then all that I had ahead of me to do to help my kids heal and help my kids thrive.
Yeah. Did it feel overwhelming?
It did feel overwhelming, but that Facebook group of people who were also feeling the same thing as me was such a source of comfort. And we joke among us that that's kind of where we go to hang out, even now when we're online. But it is so true that when I was having a day and I just didn't know what to do, that's where I'd go and I'd read about other families experiencing the same stuff as me, or I'd ask a question and I'd get such great answers from, adoptees or from birth parents or foster parents who were kind of in the trenches of doing it with, multiple different kids. And I just had one in front of me. Such a source of support and encouragement. So, yeah.
Yeah.
What was one of the biggest challenges that you faced when you were kind of starting on this responsiveness to the need that you were following? What was one of the biggest challenges that you just felt like, ooh, we've got a big nut to crack and I don't know what to do about it?
Well, honestly, just the mechanics of running a nonprofit was probably my biggest challenge. There are multiple challenges. One, of course, is how do you meet the need? And you would think in many ways that would have been the biggest challenge. But for whatever reason, the way my interest, that was what I was interested in. That
Hmm.
was what was my passion. So that was fuel to me, and that was exciting. But the actual, how do you run a nonprofit? How do you figure out how to make a nonprofit support itself?
Right.
All of that, it wasn't my passion, and it wasn't necessarily in my wheelhouse. And I knew I had to grow in that area. So I
Mhm.
treated it as a challenge. Okay, I can figure this out. I always look at difficult situations to get somebody else has figured it out. If they can do it, I can do it. Which now that it sounds pretty egotistical, because there's certainly
No.
things that I haven't been able to figure out. But I always go in with
Right.
the assumption, other than heights, I always think, no, I can't do that. Anything with
No.
heights, I go, no, no, they could do it,
I'm
but
with you on that
I
one.
cannot do that. So for me, that was the more challenging of the
Yeah.
many obstacles that were existing.
But I think one of the things I've admired the most about you in the years that I've known you is that it could be, to quote you, a big darn deal. And you might feel a little kind of overwhelmed by it, but you have been so excellent at surrounding yourself with people who
Hmm.
can bring that expertise to the table or bring
You're
that
right.
support and encouragement. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about how you grew the board of directors and how kind of that vision started and what you were looking for when you were starting to put all that in place.
That's a good question. That was a major learning process for me. And periodically at board meetings, especially when a new board member joins, we go around and introduces and what drew them to service at creating a family. And oftentimes what they will say is that I sucked them in, or I enveloped them in my net, which makes me sound well, like the Black Widow or something. But in fact, that's how I did. I mean, I don't think I sucked them in, nor do I think I had my net. But I do, when I would meet somebody who felt like spirited, they would have a spark that you could tell that they cared about some of the same things that you and I have talked about. Walking the line between preparation and positivity and joy,
Mhm.
which is a really hard line to walk, as we said. So that, but also recognizing that parents need help and that they're afraid to ask for help oftentimes, and judgment is huge in this field. And so being able to support in a loving and kind way. So when I would find people who you could just tell, and oftentimes there were people I interviewed on the show, or I did a lot of presenting at conferences, and I could listen to
Mhm.
somebody, and I would go up and I would start talking to them, and then I would just ask. And a lot of them, fortunately, said yes. And so we currently have a wonderful board, but we, over the years, have had really strong people on the board. And as you say, that surrounding yourself, because no one knows all the answers, and so
Right.
surrounding yourself with phenomenal staff and a strong board, that is the magic sauce.
Yeah. We're so fortunate to have a board that's so supportive of all of the adventures we go on as a team for continuing to meet the needs of the audience that we're serving. So big
Yes.
shout out to past board members, but also to current board members to whom we are very grateful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you mentioned the technical challenges of getting a podcast up and running. How have you seen podcasting change in the 18 years since you launched this one?
Oh gosh.
I know. It's a big question.
Let me count the ways. I mean,
Right.
anybody who has been involved in podcasting could, it's in truly the last 10 years, there has been a total sea change. Just as a small example, when sending emails to potential guests, I didn't use the word podcast for, I would call it a radio interview, because people wouldn't know what a podcast
Right.
was. So I would just think it's easier for me to explain what this is, but everybody would know what a radio interview is. So my subject line was always radio interview request. And then I added internet radio interview request. And then,
Yeah.
eventually I switched to podcast, not because I was hesitant to use the word podcast, but because the people who I was asking wouldn't have a clue what it was. I guess one of the advantages probably at the beginning was that there weren't a lot of us doing it. So
Mhm.
it allowed us to get I was going to say a toehold, but really a foothold.
Hmm.
So I don't know if we bragged about this on the. I don't know that we've bragged about this on the show, but let me brag now.
Go for it.
We are, well, within the last month, we received notification that well, we first were told that we were ranked number 12 in all parenting podcasts, which blew my mind because parenting podcast is a huge
Huge
area. Yeah,
category.
huge
Yeah.
category. Thank you, category. I went, wow, that's amazing. And then I guess they were releasing rankings at different categories, and that's obviously was a big category. So that was one of the first ones. But now they've got other rankings, and we are number 2 in child welfare, number 2 in foster care, and number 2 in adoption.
Woo-hoo.
So I know, yeah, no pressure on you, Tracy, right?
Ah.
so, so getting that toehold, foothold really helped because there weren't a lot of, but there also weren't as many listeners. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Now, I am so thankful that we're not. I think it'd be very hard to start a podcast now because there is a big audience, and that's the good news. The bad
Yeah.
news is that there are so many, 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 many
Yeah.
podcasts.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of resources available for those of us doing it at the beginning. And we didn't have the funds to avail ourselves to, we could have, built a studio and doing stuff like that, but we had to be renting these things because we didn't have, we just didn't have we didn't have the money. Now there are a lot more resources. And now we've grown up. We have a wonderful sound engineer, Sarah McGowan, and anybody's looking for a great audio engineer, look her
Yeah.
up.
She's fantastic.
She's fantastic. Now she's on our staff. She's been a contractor. Now we've hired her on our staff. So there are just so many resources that
Right.
are available. And quite frankly, Zoom. Zoom didn't exist way back
Right.
when. We were having to do it
Yep.
over telephone lines.
Yep.
So anyway, a lot has changed, including the number of podcasts.
Yeah. And at this point, I will put a plug in for our listeners who've been listening to Dawn for a very long time. Be patient and gracious. I'm on a learning curve and I'm doing my best to meet your needs. And I am so thankful and so honored by the opportunity to fill Dawn's shoes, but it's big shoes to fill.
Well, and when we first approached you with this, you could see Tracy's eyes get really big, and she was like, really? And what Tracy has always said about me is that I say hell bent. She probably says heck bent, but determined, shall we say, to drag her into her discomfort zone, out of her comfort zone. She has said that about me from the beginning, and I take great pride in
Yep.
that.
Yep.
But what I love about you, Tracy, is that you've always said yes. Every time we say, would you be willing? Like I used to do all the blogging. And then I said, Tracy, you've got such a voice. I would love for you to start doing that. And you were like, oh, I don't know. And she, I don't know if I can. And I went, oh, yes, you can. And it was a learning curve. You said, you kept saying, I haven't found my voice. And then
Yep.
you found your voice. And the same thing will happen here. You already are finding your voice.
And shout out to my 2 favorite high school English teachers, Mrs. Slewinski and Mr. Capitano, for nurturing my love of writing. Wow. I always wanted to be a writer, always dreamt of being able to have that voice. So I was more than happy to find that voice and use it. I don't think that I was quite as happy when you asked me to start being the host, and then sprung it on me that we were going from audio only to video.
Yeah,
and
well, that wasn't exactly planned, I must admit. I did think when we decided, and the reason, just for the audience, the reason that we've done that is that YouTube is, which, by the way, everybody, shout out, we are on YouTube, and YouTube is the fastest growing podcasting platform. And we've been on YouTube for a long time, audio, but I always thought, who listens to audio on YouTube? I'm sure plenty of people do.
Apparently.
And then about 6 months ago, I was saying that in a staff meeting, and it was brought up, well, most people are not listening to audio, they're watching video. We were like, oh, darn. So Tracy and I were like, oh, I said, oh, does that mean I have to actually put on makeup? And then the real one was, God, that means I have to fix my hair.
Yeah.
This guy, by the way, everybody, if you're not watching, this is what, whether it looks like it or not,
Yes.
this is fixed hair.
Yes. And this is humidity hair.
Yeah. Yeah. But you've got curls, and curls look great in humidity.
Yes. The grayer I get, the curlier it gets.
Well, okay. That's what, yeah, I want your curls.
I
So,
don't even care. I've earned all the gray.
yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah. I will say one of the proudest moments of my career, aside from being asked to do the writing and then the podcast, is when my daughter-in-law said to me, "Yay, mom, for doing it scared." And that
Yes.
was probably the most gratifying thing I've heard from anyone in my life, because the fact that I could do it scared
Yes.
and that my daughters in particular are watching me
Yes.
made me so proud. My sons are really good at doing stuff scared, but I really appreciate that my daughter-in-law and daughter-in-laws
Mhm.
both and my daughters are watching and are seeing me do things scared. And I tell them all the time that this is the scariest thing I've ever done. But I was really proud of that.
But that's bravery. I mean, and that is the essence of bravery or courage is, I mean, I don't know who said it, but it's not courageous if you're not scared. So the people who are doing the hard things, it's not that they're
Yeah.
doing it because they aren't scared. They're doing it even though they are scared. And that
Yeah.
is bravery.
Yeah.
And I think you're brave.
Oh, thank you. It's easy for me to keep choosing that because I feel so passionately about strengthening families
Yeah.
and helping kids find paths to healing from whatever it is that they've experienced before they came to the family that they're in.
Yes.
I'm sorry to pop back in on you, but I wanted to remind you about our free monthly newsletter. If you sign up at creatingafamily.org/newsletter, you can pick a free download that suits your family's needs, and you can get monthly support, new resources, and encouragement right to your inbox. We allow you to choose a parent or caregiver version or a professional version, and you can sign up today to start getting, as soon as next month, a free monthly newsletter with that free download as our gift to say thank you. And now back to our interview. I want to know, kind of switching gears a little bit, if there are one or two other than Dr. Purvis, which is the big catch for all of us that we are excited about here. Was there one or two big fish that you were pretty excited to get as guests on the podcast?
I mentioned Bruce Perry. I have a lot of respect. I believe we've interviewed him twice. I'm pretty sure we have. Tracy's shaking her head. So
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. It's funny how much I forget who we have interviewed. I know that seems to you right now, it seems unimaginable, but I promise you're going to also do this. I never, ever go back and listen to shows. I just don't. So off of the top of my head, I almost hate to say, and I almost hate to answer that question because I will leave somebody out that is big and important and that was meaningful to me. And I don't want to leave anybody out. And honestly, just because I get as much joy out of discovering a new expert or a new person or lived experience. One of my favorites, we've done this a number of times. We do panels. Mm-hmm. I've done panels of transracial adoptees. I love adolescence, the age adolescence. I didn't so much love it when I was going through it, but I love hanging out with that age. When for 16 years, I worked with the youth group at church, and I always gravitated towards or asked to be placed with the high school agers. And I've loved doing those panels. Mm-hmm. I find that I get so much out of them. We've done panels of former foster youth. We've done panels for those youth that were being raised or were raised in an open adoption, panels of birth parents. All of those in some ways have been the most meaningful. And as you will find out, doing a panel show is one of the harder shows to do because it's hard to interview in a way that, and I'm not sure that we've always done a great job of this, but where you're making sure that everybody gets a voice. And then, but you're also, it's hard to do conversation, which our style, people learn through conversation more than monologue, even though this is turning out to be a big monologue because I'm talking mostly. but this is nobody's learning anything here, so it's okay. It's harder to do, and it's much harder to book, especially that age. They don't use email, so you have to text. I know I sound like the old fogey going, oh, get off my lawn. But it's like, oh gosh, I text all the time, but it's not in my business workflow. So it's
Right.
harder for me to do. Anyway, for all of those reasons, they're harder, but I always leave those shows feeling invigorated. So I will pick that one, those,
Yeah.
many of them that we've done.
They're super impactful.
They
Yeah.
are, they are. And parents who've raised kids or are raising kids who are prenatally exposed, we've done those. We've just done a lot of panel shows of lived experience, and those are probably the most meaningful to me.
How have you seen this podcast impact the families that are listening and that we serve?
That goes back to we are so dependent on our comments because we
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
We're talking into the abyss, and it's so helpful to have comments coming back. And also comments on people don't comment as often on articles anymore, but those also are meaningful. And our support groups, especially the large online one.
Yeah.
When we hear positive comments about, I realize that attachment is a two-way street. That it's if my child is struggling, the first place I need to look is myself, because I have power and control over me as the parent, whereas
Right.
I may think I have power and control over my child, but the truth is I have less. There are things that I can do. What am I bringing to the table from my own history or from my stubbornness on my parenting style or whatever,
Right.
And when I see people grow in that way where they're willing to look, are people who were afraid of open adoption and were coming to it.
Mm.
And we try to take it as a non-judgmental approach when they say, I don't want
Right.
to open this because I don't want two parents, rather than saying, well, you shouldn't adopt. We would say, we will try to explore with people. Well, when you adopt, they do have two parents, but why is that threatening? You had two grandparents. Could you love them both? There are things that we could hold your hand and walk you to help you. And when we see people open up to that, are people who are afraid to take a child who, let's say, had been sexually abused because they're afraid of the ramifications. And we can help show them ways that they have the power to help these children heal. And then they feel empowered, and to know that they can keep coming back to us, and we'll be here. We'll be here to answer your questions and to support you. I think that's probably the most meaningful.
I totally agree with that. And I think that's one of my soapboxes in the larger Creating a Family Facebook group that we run, is just creating that warm, safe space for,
Yes.
we call them newbies, to ask the questions that may feel, to us who've been doing this for a while, may feel like kind of a strange or ignorant question, but there's no stupid question. There's no stupid
Yes.
inquiry about where to start, how to do this, what's the the right posture to take. And I'm so tender and protective of our newbies.
Me too.
Because I remember how it
Same.
felt to be asking questions that seemed like common sense to everyone else when I asked it, but it wasn't common sense to me because I had spent all these previous years raising biological children who didn't have the same context. So yeah, I think that's one of my favorite impacts, is when we hear somebody say, when I was brand new and I didn't know what I was doing, you guys really held my hand and helped me find my right footing.
And we have to shut down, honestly, some of the people who've been a while who want to say, well, of course you know, of course you should know that, or of course well, you're doing it all wrong. And Tracy, more so than me, but me as well, and our other moderators, we have a group of moderators, and we say, look out for those people, jump in and shut down the naysayers and say, you didn't know all this stuff at the beginning either.
Exactly.
So, we don't say it this way, but hush.
Be kind.
Put a sock in it. Yeah, we don't say be kind.
No, we don't say put a sock in it.
And we don't say, I might. You would never, but I think it. But no, I don't always. But I do say be kind.
Yes. Yep. So we have a really strong voice and mission to support parents and caregivers, but we also direct a lot of our content to professionals. And I'm wondering, when you are networking with professionals, what are some of the feedback that you get from them about the resources that we've created over these 18 years?
A couple things. My favorite one is when they say, "Oh, I recommend your resources to all of our parents." And that just,
Yay!
I know, I feel says exactly how I feel. And I say, well, thank you, because
Yep.
that's, if you create a wonderful resource, we do a great interview with a wonderful expert on the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
or you write a phenomenal article, or we create an unbelievable training, or a curriculum, or a course, or something along those lines, and nobody
Mm-hmm.
uses it. Well, it's
Right.
worthless. So
Right.
I absolutely, that it's it's like, okay, you are helping, and I say that, I say, well, you are helping us achieve our mission, because
Yep.
we can do all the creating, we're good at that, but the distribution, we need help with. So that's one of them. The other thing that I love when talking with professionals is we feel like we have a really good finger on the pulse, because we interact with our podcast audience through comments and things. We interact with our really large, we're over 11,000 members in our online support group. And then we do training. So we're talking with, and we have a kinship advisory committee. We have a youth advisory committee. So we're listening. We feel like we have a good finger on the pulse, but professionals have a different finger on the pulse.
Mm-hmm.
Not better, and some, but different. So what I really appreciate is when professionals will say, and we encourage this, so we do hear it. You tell us if there's a resource that you need that we don't have. That is really helpful for us.
Yeah.
And we
Yep.
rely on professionals to let us know that. And
Yep.
it's really interesting, the things we will hear and we'll think, oh, I didn't think about, or I thought that was well covered. We love that because it
I
helps
do
us.
too.
If we're
Yep.
meeting, if they see the need, then that tells us, okay, we can jump in and try to meet that need.
Yep. And we've got resources to help.
Yeah. And if we don't, we will
Yeah.
create them.
Right.
Yeah.
And actually, that actually just happened this month. We had an article that we had archived because it was very old. And one of our professionals reached out to us and said, I can't find that article anymore. And I use it for my demographic quite frequently. And so I slated it for a republish, and I took it back out and I updated it, and I changed the graphics, and I updated the language and got everything ready. And I went live last week, and then I sent the link to her and started a whole conversation between her and I about this community that we serve and how we can better serve them and how we can get to know each other better to continually meet the mutual needs of the communities that we're serving. So it was pretty exciting.
And another example of that is we have a partnership with a number of states, but in this particular case, it was
Right.
the state of Nebraska. And
Mm-hmm.
they utilize all of our courses. And so if you're in Nebraska, make sure you're using, you get them
Yes.
all free through our partnership with the state. But they needed, well, they've asked for a number of courses, but one was on trafficking. And they needed that to train their foster parents. And we have a number of resources, but we did not have a specific course on it. And I said, thank you for telling us that you need this. We absolutely, and reasonable and prudent parent standard. I actually thought that that had been well covered through pre-service training for foster parents. So I didn't think we needed to do that. And they came and they said, well, actually, no, we want to make sure that it covers a number of things that they
Yep.
didn't feel like the current trainings covered. So we were able to create a training for them on that. So, and I wouldn't have known if they hadn't have asked that they thought that the current, what was existing was not for everyone, was really not meeting their needs.
So, listeners, if you are a professional or if you are a parent or caregiver, give us your feedback. We love hearing from you, and we really do try to implement the suggestions for research or suggestions for topics that you send us. They are so valuable to us.
And the best way to do that would be comment on the podcast,
Yep.
or you can send an email,
Yep.
info@creatingafamily.org. However, we really would appreciate the comments on the podcast, because it helps us for other reasons in
Yes.
addition. So
Yes.
selfishly, please do it that way.
Yeah. Or do both if you have to. That's fine too.
Yeah. All right, all right. You could do it both ways.
Yeah. If you have the time, cut
Yeah,
and paste.
yeah, cut and paste. Yeah, exactly.
One more interruption, I promise. We have a library of free courses that are specifically designed to support and encourage and strengthen your family, whether you are foster, adoptive, or kinship caregiver. We have 15 free courses at bit.ly/JBF support. That's bit.ly/JBF support. The Jockey Being Family Foundation generously provides the resources for us to offer all 15 of these courses. You can take one, you can take two, you can take as many as you need that are in the library for free. And now we're going to go back to the show. Thanks so much. Let's look a little bit towards the future here. What are some of the greatest challenges that you see facing the adoptive, foster, and kinship spaces as we move forward from today?
I don't know. I always hate those, looking into the future, because it makes me feel like I have a crystal ball, which of course I do not.
Right.
We're entering a time where there's threats to funding, and federal funding has so far been crucial. Everything's up in the air, so it's really hard to know,
Right.
is that really going to be an issue or not? I don't want to be a doomsday prophet here, and so it may not be. I mean, I just don't think we know. So that's an issue. Other than that, it feels like we do not see a reduction in children who are exposed to alcohol and drugs. That will continue to be, whether they're enter the foster care system or not. We know that all the demographics we serve, foster, adoptive, regardless of the type of adoption, and kinship, and we don't see that is decreasing.
Yeah.
I hope very much that it will. And getting the message out about alcohol and pregnancy is important. But then we see a much greater exposure to marijuana now. So I don't see that decreasing. Right now, the number of kids in foster care actually is lower, not hugely lower, but a little bit. And that's a positive trend. There's also a big movement towards getting children placed who enter the system, enter the child welfare system, getting them placed with extended family. That's a very positive move. A big fear I have about this is I think there is, and I'm going to say up front that this is not universally shared. So this is my soapbox right now. We'll see. I hope I am proved wrong, but there's a huge push to place kids with relatives. There is not a concurrent push to support and educate these relatives that the children are being placed with. And it feels a little like very often that children are being dumped with relatives. It's like, okay, it's cheaper for us. And so there are moves now to be able to financially support kin who are licensed as foster parents. And in some states, even if they're not licensed, that's a tremendous step forward. And because finances matter, money matters. But, and I say this is coming from the training and support space, but there's equal need. Just because you're placed with a relative doesn't mean that you have not experienced the trauma that comes with even if it wasn't an abusive home, a chaotic home, a neglectful home. I mean, grandparents are not stepping in when everything's rosy.
Exactly.
Usually something bad, not always, but almost always, something bad has happened in that child's life so that their parents are not able to raise them. And these relatives, most often grandparents, but also aunts and uncles, older siblings, neighbors, teachers. So these fictive kin and kin, they need support and training, and it's a challenge. And so that's one of the greatest challenges I think facing our field, and one that certainly we are taking extremely seriously at Creating a Family is how do we walk alongside our relative caregivers? And I don't know that anybody has cracked that nut yet, but we are certainly attempting to crack the nut. We are working on, we've just are hopefully this next month, starting the pilot of a curriculum that's geared exclusively for kinship caregivers. It can be used as pre-service if they're going to become licensed, but we anticipate more often it's going to be used after the child, whether you're licensed or whether you're a grandmom who just showed up at the house and said, okay, these kids aren't being neglected. I'm going to take you home. Or the kids were dropped off at me and the parents didn't show back up. So whether you're formal or informal relative caregiver, It can be used after the child is in your home. It can be done one-on-one with you. It can be done in a group. It can be done as a training. It can be done as a support group. We're going to start a pilot and an evaluation for that. So stay tuned. We hope this
Yeah.
time next year that our results will be in and that it will be evidence-based and that we will be ready to distribute it to those who are not in the pilot. So anyway, I do perceive that that is a big issue
Yeah.
in our future. And we're
Yep.
trying very, very hard as an organization to meet it, but it's a challenge.
Yep. It is. I'm very excited about the pilot. I'm very excited about the curriculum and what we put together and the needs that it brings up that they might not even know are coming down the pike,
Yes,
and tools that we're putting in their hands to help them
me
meet
too.
those needs.
And I will say that Tracy has a specific foot in this, hand in this pie. I guess not foot in the pie. That's not the right one. Hand in the pie. In that, in addition to all the other things she does for us, she also is the facilitator of our online kinship support group. So anybody out there, you could not have a kinder facilitator or a more supportive group. But she's excited. I don't think you're not part of the pilot, though, are you?
No, my group is not part of the pilot, but we meet on the fourth Thursday of every month at 7 o'clock Eastern Time by Zoom. If you are interested, email me at tracy@creatingafamily.org. We are forming this little community of connectedness, sharing the ups and downs of the journey. One of the things that I'm learning about these kinship support caregivers that I support is that sometimes they don't even know what they don't know.
Okay. How do any of
And
us know what we don't know?
it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. But the opportunity and the privilege of bringing information to them and saying, here's what might be going on. One of my favorite conversations that we had in that group was the topic of behavior is a communication of a need. And so
Mhm.
it's so easy to just look at the behavior and be frustrated by, annoying behavior or be overwhelmed by ranting and raging and things like that. But when we talk about the fact that those surface behaviors are because of an underlying
Mhm.
unmet need, kind of seeing the light bulbs go off when we talked about that
Uh-huh.
as a group. And
It's
um,
powerful for you as a parent or a
so
caregiver.
powerful.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, oh wait, okay,
Yeah.
I can needs I
Oh, I
can
can
meet.
meet that need.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
The tantrum, not so much, but
Right. And
the
yes.
frustration
And
that's
all
leading
of
to
us
it.
get
Yeah.
frustrated. Yes. We
Amen.
all get frustrated by those
So,
tantrums, and we
yeah.
all are overwhelmed, and we feel our own blood pressure rising and our own
We all have our
dysregulation
own
happening.
buttons that are being pushed. Yeah. Mine are
Right.
different from yours,
Right.
but by golly,
Exactly. So that's one of my favorite things about the kinship community that I'm working to build and create together. Let's get a little bit more personal now and
oh,
talk
let's
about
don't.
oh
No, you can't. I don't know what you're going to ask, but okay.
I wondered if there's any personal lessons that you took in your own growth as a mom or as a professional or as just a human living this life from the season of life when you were building this organization and doing the hard work to set the foundation sure. What were some of the life lessons that you took away?
Oh, Tracy, that is a hard question.
I know it is. I'm not going to do a softball.
Please do a softball.
Not
Oh,
all of them.
uh, that's hard because there are so many. I guess if
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's one thing that I truly believe that I've learned through parenting, lo those many years and lo these many children, is the importance of having fun as a family. I know that is probably not what anybody is anticipating. Although, if you've back when I was doing the articles, that
Mhm.
is something. If you read all of mine, you would see. I think that's if I had a tip, my number one parenting. I think I actually had a blog that was called my number one parenting tip,
Yeah.
and that's it. It's easy to get into the rut of parenting, which we all have to. We have
Hmm.
to have routines. I love routines more
Right.
than,
Right.
especially as a parent. And now that my kids are all flown the coop, I have fewer routines and I like not having, but I find that I still have to have some. But with my children, I absolutely had to. And we're focusing on, okay, meeting these unmet needs. Are we focusing on they're in the stage, or we're focusing on, okay, we've got soccer practice, or we've got little league, or we've got,
Right.
dance, or we've got, it's easy to become just it feels like you're a machine, not a family. You're a machine
Hmm.
that, okay, here's the, I mean, and honestly, this is how our weeks would sometimes look. Anybody who's a parent would know this. All right,
Right.
Monday we've got so and so going here. We've got so and so going here. Okay, the other two are going to have breakfast over here. I mean, dinner over here. Okay, who's going to be home with this? With the ones here. Who's going to be going here? Okay, how are we going to get this person over here, this person over here? Or somebody then says, "Oh, I really want to try out for the play." Okay, do we have, as a family, do we have the bandwidth to add one more thing? Plays we'd always say yes to because it was usually a limited time. But oh, I
Yeah.
want to try taekwondo. And it's like, okay, I remember we said no to Cub Scouts. We just said, we as a family, Boy Scouts, we will make a point out, but Cub Scouts, we as a family do not have the bandwidth to have another activity for a
Right.
couple of our kids in the week. I
Right.
know that's controversial and people out there are going to say, oh, but it was such a good thing to do. And it probably is. And we did do Boy Scouts
Yeah.
and Girl Scouts. So, okay. But we just said no to brownies and no to Cub Scouts. But it's easy to forget that what holds you together and what binds you is
Yeah.
the fun things that you do together.
Yeah.
And that's as important for the parents as it is for the kids. And I think
Yeah.
if there's one message I would have, and I say this on the end, like I said, I'm an empty nester now. And I look back and my children look back. And it doesn't have to be the big expensive playing games at dinner every night. It's something, that our family did. But, we also did, for us, it was a TV show, not a movie night. But, anyway, we would do movie night or TV show. And it doesn't have to be expensive. Going on hikes until that no longer became something that one
Yeah.
of our kids would stomach. And, listening to him complain about it was too much. So then we had to shift. And that was
Right.
also the reality.
Right.
And truthfully, I had to shift because I loved it. One of my dreams as a parent was being able to go take my kids hiking, and it was fulfilling a great need for me. And it worked for a while until one of my kids turned 13. And then
Yeah.
and then
13
honestly,
is its own beast.
yeah, it just didn't work anymore. And I had to say, okay, I'm the problem here. There
Right.
has to be, this is
Right.
no longer fun for us as a family.
Right.
Fun for me, but not for him. So anyway, I had to give it up. And so anyway, that would be my one thing, I guess, if I was going to say. I'm not sure that answered your question, but
Oh, it does. And that's actually what I was hoping that you would answer, because it has
oh,
also been one of those things that you've been such a great mentor to me in so many ways, parenting, professionally, all the ways. But this issue of having fun with your family and setting aside space and
hmm
time for making memories. And
hmm
sometimes that looks like planning nothing, and sometimes that looks like forced family fun.
yeah.
And
Well, and
it's
putting it
been
on your
such a,
calendar,
yes,
that was the
yes,
eye opener
yes.
for it. It has to be because in the chaos that is family life, regardless if you have
Yeah,
one child or eight, the
yeah,
chaos is such that if it's not on the
yeah,
calendar, it doesn't happen.
yeah. We have just two children living at home right now, so we're not close to the empty nest that you're enjoying yet. But I look back and I think, how on earth did I do this with all six kids living at home at the same time and only one car? How did we do this? How did I do this? As my husband traveled almost full time, so
It was easier with just one car because then you could just say, no,
it was a
I can't.
forced no.
It was a forced no. Yeah. I had two cars and it wasn't
Oh,
and my husband then didn't
yeah,
travel a lot. So we had to force the no on ourselves, which makes it harder.
yeah. So, what are you most excited about for the future of creating a family as you're moving aside to welcome this new executive director coming up soon? What are you most excited about?
Linda Fiore is joining us as our new executive director, and one of the things I'm very excited about is her and having her join us with her energy, her background, the things that she
Mhm.
is bringing to the table, which I'm very looking forward to. And the other thing is going to sound pandering, but it isn't. We have such a strong team. People think of creating a family, often think of me because they hear my voice. But the truth is, I am the tip of an iceberg, and it's the part that's under the surface that you guys don't see is so, so strong. I can't speak highly enough of everyone who we have on our staff. And we feel like I'm going to probably jinx this when I say we're beginning. We feel like we're a well-oiled machine. There are some creaks, and I know there are places that we as a group, as a staff, think, oh, we could put a little oil on this one. But for the most part, and this is where we've been works in progress, and we will continue to be.
Right.
If you're an evolving organization, you have to evolve and change and recognize strengths and continue those and recognize weaknesses. But I am so excited to see where this staff will take this organization. And I feel so proud to know that regardless if I'm here, the organization is going to go places. They're going to soar. And I can't wait to see how you soar.
Oh, I'm excited about that too. I think a lot of it, we need to give credit where credit is due. And it's because of your very intentional, thoughtful pursuit of excellence and of responsiveness.
And hiring. Yes, I hire well. Yes. I'm sorry. I spoke over you. Sorry.
Nope, that's fine. You've been so thoughtful and intentional in setting a sure foundation, and we're very grateful for that. It's positioned us very well for welcoming the next executive director, but also for the next chapters of the organization. So one more question. The listeners and I would all love to know if you have any big plans for your retirement season of life.
That's a work in progress. It is something that I am being very intentional on because I know myself and I know that I want to continue to give back and utilize my brain. And I've got a couple of ideas, but I'm being very intentional and I'm being very, well, I don't know if I'm being thoughtful. I hope I'm being thoughtful. I do know I'm being intentional. So I guess it's TBD, to be determined. But we do have a very fun trip plan that I am looking forward to in September. And so the hubby and I are, my husband and I are going to go to France for a month. So I am very excited about that.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
And of course, grandbaby snuggles.
Well, yes, I now am a grandmom to two. So I should have mentioned that first. To be honest, that is what I am looking the most forward to. Is there is something really special about, as you now are a grandmom.
Yes, I am.
That I am looking so forward to that.
I'm so excited for you.
It is truly special.
Awesome.
And of course, I do have the two most adorable grandchildren in the whole wide world. So
in North Carolina.
Other than yours,
mine are in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Okay. Other than the two of the four most adorable.
Exactly. We'll share the honor.
We'll share. Yeah.
Well, Dawn Davenport, thank you so much for your many years of service and commitment and passion for the adoptive, foster, and kinship communities that we support and serve. Thank you for your time today. I know being on the other side of the mic is not your comfort zone, but we really appreciate this opportunity to hear from you directly about where we've been and where we're going. And we're grateful for your time today. Thanks so much.
Oh, you are so welcome. And you're right, it wasn't my comfort zone, but this was fun. Thank you.
I got to drag you out of your comfort zone.
Turnaround's fair play.
Oh, that's great.
All right.
Thanks so much for listening. Bye, guys.